Committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. And echoing my ranking member's sentiments, I'm very, very pleased to have you here today. The Honorable Mike Hammer is Special Envoy to the Horn of Africa, Bureau of African Affairs, U.S. Department of State. Tyler Beckelman is Deputy Assistant Administrator, Bureau for Africa, U.S. Agency for International Development. I thank you again each for being here today. Your full statements will be made a part of the record, and I'll ask each of you to please keep your spoken remarks to about 5 minutes, in order to allow for member questions. I now recognize Mr. Hammer for his opening statement. Good to see you again, sir.
Good to see you, Chairman James, Ranking Member Jacobs. It is a pleasure to see you both again. And I welcome the opportunity to discuss U.S. policy and interest in Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa with you and the distinguished members of the subcommittee, as well as other members who have come here today because of their interest in Ethiopia. And I also want to recognize the Ethiopian diaspora, which is extremely active and which, of course, cares very deeply about events in Ethiopia. Ethiopia, as you have said, Mr. Chairman, is a strategically important country. The Biden-Harris administration is committed to working to promote peace, democracy, and economic development for the benefit of all Ethiopians, the broader region, as well as the American people. Our long-term goal is to support policies and reforms that will enable greater partnership between our two countries. During my tenure as Special Envoy, the administration has focused on bringing an end to conflicts in Ethiopia and reducing tensions around the filling and operation of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, otherwise known as GERD. Following the November 2022 Cessation of Hostilities Agreement, the COHA, between the government of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, we have been focused on the agreement's implementation while impressing upon the Ethiopian government the importance of dialogue and negotiation as a path to resolving ongoing violence in Oromia and Amhara. And we regularly engage with the Ethiopian diaspora to explain U.S. policy, encourage civil discourse, and foster reconciliation among all ethnicities and regions. As we pursue these policies with our colleagues at USAID and the interagency, we absolutely prioritize our responsibility to U.S. taxpayers. In Pretoria, I was proud to represent the United States as an active observer in the African Union facilitated talks that led to the COHA. Within 48 hours of the signing of the COHA, it silenced the guns and ended a horrific two-year war that killed hundreds of thousands and caused untold suffering, including from horrific mass sexual and gender-based violence. Since its signing, the United States has supported efforts to implement all aspects of the COHA, among them transitional justice, accountability, protection of civilians, and respect for human rights, including by funding of international human rights observers. As Secretary Blinken said during his visit this last March, to avoid future conflicts arising from past grievances, it is important, essential, to account for the war crimes, crimes against humanity, and other human rights abuses and violations committed in the context of Ethiopia's conflicts. Shortly after his visit, the Secretary announced his determination that all sides had committed horrific atrocities in the northern conflict and that ensuring accountability will be a key element of our policy towards Ethiopia. As part of our commitment to accountability, the State Department has supported the work of the Transitional Justice Working Group of Experts, an independent body with a nationwide mandate. This working group held 60 consultations throughout Ethiopia to gather views from affected communities on the desire for justice, truth, reparations, and institutional reform. We look forward to the working group's recommendations, and we will work with the Ethiopian government, civil society, and the victims, including survivors of the conflict-related sexual violence, on their implementation on the implementation of their recommendations. Over the last year, we have seen significant progress. For example, independent monitors have reported a dramatic decrease in human rights violations and abuses in Tigray. However, much more needs to be done. Eritrean forces have not fully withdrawn from Ethiopia. Disarmament, demobilization, and reintegration, DDR, of the Tigrayan forces is lagging, and the status of contested areas remains unresolved. Therefore, implementation of the COHA remains a work in progress. And we are deeply concerned about the ongoing violence in Amhara and Oromia. There have been credible reports of gross violations of human rights, significant loss of life, and severe economic disruption. We have urged all actors to refrain from violence and hate speech and to protect civilians, and we have offered to support or participate in mediation efforts. In fact, I returned this last week from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, where the U.S. participated in talks between the Ethiopian government and the Oromo Liberation Army. We reiterated to all involved that there are no military solutions to the complex challenges posed by these situations. Compounding these challenges, Ethiopia is also confronting macroeconomic stresses. Foreign exchange reserves are at the lowest in 2 decades. Inflation has averaged over around 30% for the last 2 years. So the IMF is in discussions with the government of Ethiopia over concerns about the state of the economy. Regarding the GERD, we are encouraged that there are diplomatic negotiations underway between the parties, and the United States remains actively diplomatically engaged to support those parties in achieving an agreement that benefits Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan, as well as the region writ large. In closing, let me reiterate my appreciation to this committee for your commitment and counsel. Rest assured that we are clear-eyed about the challenges in Ethiopia as we work to support an Ethiopia that is more peaceful and prosperous, one in which the United States and Ethiopia can benefit from a strong partnership. Thank you, and I look forward to your insights, recommendations, and to answering your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hammer. I now recognize Mr. Beckelman for his opening statement.